So today I'm going to be making a really good tutorial on camera tracking, specifically in Fusion. It's in the Fusion tab of Resolve, because I've had a big problem with this the past week. I could not figure out how to get it to work, and it was frustrating because when I would put the footage into After Effects and do, like the automatic camera tracking thing in there, it would just do it perfectly. And I was like, what the heck, why is this working? But obviously After Effects has a really shitty 3D implementation. Like the way they set up 3D scenes and how you navigate around it, it's just horrible. I have no clue how anybody uses it. But I really like the one in Fusion, so I'm like, I need to use Fusion. So I finally figured out how to make it work, because the problem I was having is that I would have a solve error of like less than 1 pixel, so it was really low, and I was like, why is this not working? It's a really low solve error, it should be perfect, but it wasn't even tracking to the footage at all. So I was very confused as to what was happening. But I finally figured out, and now I'm going to share that with you because I think it's something that people need to know, and that some people aren't sharing in the way that they should, because it depends on the footage, at least from what I found, on how well it'll make sense to you. So what you want to do is just put the camera tracker node in there in the Fusion tab, and then I like to turn up the detection threshold, and then I'm probably just going to leave the minimum feature set right there. But if you click preview auto track locations, when you drag this down, it just adds more, and then this is just picking like points of higher contrast that are probably going to be better to track. So I'm just going to bring this up because I don't want too many tracking points. This tab right here is really interesting. I usually leave it on optical flow, but I would say either use optical flow or Fusion tracker. They're both pretty good. And then this is to close the tracks when the track error exceeds this number. You can bring this down and it'll actually give you some higher quality tracks. I'm going to just do that for fun. And then enable bidirectional tracking. That just tracks it forwards and backwards to just kind of like double check the points. But a problem I've been having, at least I'm in the version 16, I forget like the exact version number, but for some reason, if you have preview auto track locations on and bidirectional tracking, sometimes it'll make the program crash. So I just disable that and click reset a bunch of times. Then you can click auto tracking, it'll just go forwards and then backwards. And as you can see, I have a video clip of my room real quick. And I was just sitting on my chair with my camera, just doing this for a little test shot. But I think it works pretty good because I had some camera movement in there. It's pretty like realistic to something you would want to use. You don't want to have like really complicated camera movement or something like that, or be changing scenes, because that kind of messes it up a bit, as I've noticed. The next tab is the camera tab, and for this one you honestly don't need to touch anything technically, but obviously if you do, it'll make it a little better. I have no clue what the sensor, like this is the sensor size right here, and then there are some presets. So but if you have like a cinema camera, you can probably click one of these. I mean, I guess mine would be similar to a Canon 70s. I filmed it on an 80D, but I'm just gonna leave it. I'll put on like 16:9 just for fun or something like that. And then I didn't take the time to calculate the focal length, but as you'll see, it doesn't really matter that much. So right down here you can see there are 796 tracks total. So what I'm going to do is just click solve, and then we're going to see what the error is, and depending on how low it is, we can refine it from there. So I got an error of 1.94 pixels. I mean, that's okay, but it's pretty bad. You don't really want that. You want it to be lower than 1 usually. So what you can do is you can actually click select tracks satisfying filters, and what this is it filters out all of the tracks that are bad. So you have a maximum solve error, and you can actually only change the maximum solve error after you've already solved. A lot of people try and move it before they solve, and it obviously doesn't do anything. But you can bring these down, and the lower these are, the higher quality the points you're keeping. You also want to make sure you don't have too little points. So I'm actually just going to like keep these at default. And this is also the minimum track length up here. That just makes it so that they like stay on the screen longer. But I'm just going to click that, and then what you want to do is drag this solve weight down. And this, when you click this button, it selects all of the bad points, not the good ones. So you want to click this and then click set the solve weight to 0, and then you can resolve. So now as you can see, it brought it down to 1.254. I'm going to see if I can get that any lower, but I think that number will work just for what I'm trying to show you. Obviously, you know, in a production, you would not want to use that, but right now, you know, I think it'll work. Alright, so I was able to get it down to 0.809. That should be okay. So once you get it to an acceptable number, what you can do is just go to the next tab, which is the export tab. And then you can pretty much just click export. I mean, you can mess around with like the ground plane or whatever. And you can also like 3D transform your scene, but I'm not going to really get into that right now. So when you click export, it gives you all these nodes. You can click, you know, on the last one to put it in the viewer right there. And then what you want to do is usually put the merge 3D in your first viewer. Now what this will do is this will show you the 3D scene. And to navigate this, you click Alt middle mouse, and that rotates. Only middle mouse to move around. And then for some reason, this is the weirdest hotkey for it. You click the left click and middle mouse and it zooms in now. I don't know why it's that. I probably have to change it because it's really annoying. But as you can see, there's this point cloud here, and then there's your camera. So as you press play, the camera movement should match with the camera movement of the footage, which it mostly does. So now what you can do is just to test it, you can take some 3D text, just drag it in there, and then what you want to do is connect it to the merge 3D node. And this is how you add 3D objects to your scene, because what camera tracking is good for is adding things in the scene instead of over top. If you want like text over top of the screen, like pointing at something, you would usually want to just motion track a point. But we're not really doing that here. We want to actually have 3D text in the scene. So I'm just going to type in test here. And as you can see, it should be sticking to the footage pretty well. You can also disable high quality motion blur just to make it play a little better. But it's definitely not perfect right there. So what we can do actually is just kind of mess around with the position of it. So the problem that I was having is I was adding my text, for example, to the scene, and it would look something like this, where I'd have a really low solve error number, but obviously the text is just nowhere tracked to the scene. Like it's just doing its own thing, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Because sometimes, like, I had to move it around to mess it up like this, but sometimes once you just drag the text in, it'll do that by default. And what you need to do is you really need to look at this point cloud and place it in a way that actually makes sense in the 3D space. So if I put this back to default, and then let me just drag to the beginning of the clip, you can see that when I drag on these pixels right here, like if I put the camera tracker in the view, then highlight that, when I drag all of the pixels right here, you can see that it's highlighting the ones, you know, like on that back wall right there. So I want to put the text like somewhere in front of those, or like in the middle, and then you'll see it'll track pretty well. Alright, so I did, you know, try and get the number down a little bit. Got to 0.72. So as you can see, it's now tracking significantly better. Let me just get rid of those dots. And it's really kind of stuck to the scene. It's not absolutely perfect, but it gets the point across. And now I can kind of place it anywhere and it'll look pretty good. So that is, you know, for your average scene. So the next thing I'm going to show you is actually what kind of sparked my whole problem with this, is a clip of Minecraft. As you'll be able to see, I was just messing around because I was trying to practice, like I used this to practice motion tracking for Fusion, and my problem was that it literally would not track at all to the footage, and I was like, you know, what's going on here? So as you can see, I have like 6-second clip. Maybe I'll just like cut this down a little just to make it, you know, track faster. But we'll open that up in Fusion, pull up the camera tracker, and then, you know, we can just adjust these settings. Maybe bring this up a bit. Let me preview them just to make sure there's like some solid points here. I'll turn on bidirectional tracking just to show that, you know, this is going to be like the best we can possibly make it. And then I'm going to auto track, and we'll see, you know, what it comes up with. Alright, so now I'm just going to click solve, and we'll just see, you know, it should be pretty quick. There's only 471 tracks. Yeah, so look, we have an an average solve error of 0.7397 pixels. Now when I click export, I'm going to drag this here, we're going to open this up, drag in the 3D text, just type like test. And then we can, put this in the merge 3D, and you can see the text right there, right? But when we press play, it's just not tracked at all. So the problem is, and this took me a while to figure out because I didn't know what was going on. It's like, the average track error is really low and all, but what it is that the scene is very compressed. You can see these point clouds, and this is, like the 3D reconstruction of the scene. It's very close to the camera. So I got to drag this text size down, and then you have to, wait, make sure, yeah, it's selected right there. Then bring it really close. It's going to look too close, but then you can just drag the text size down again. And when I play this, now it's finally tracked. I mean, it's not too good. I got to like mess around with it. But if you're having that problem where it's either just not tracked at all, or it's like really weird, even though you should be having like a really, it's supposed to be statistically nice, it's got like a low solve error and stuff, and an accurate focal length. Obviously, I don't know what the focal length of the scene is because it's a game, but this is how you would do it. And I could not figure this out for the longest time, and it was really annoying. But, I finally figured out that is why. So I can just kind of move this around. I'll probably bring it back a little bit, and then kind of like put it right there. That might look a little better. Yeah, and as you can see, it's pretty closely tracked to like where it should be. I mean, I can obviously improve it a little because I didn't even like filter out these tracks. Let me just bring these to 0 and see what happens if I can get a better one. So yeah, look, it's at 0.2656 pixels. That is extremely low. That should be like an amazing track, and of course it is. So there you go. It can work on a variety of footage, because my problem was that like I could only get it to really work on like real life footage, obviously, and not something like a game cinematic. And I thought that it just couldn't really like figure it out, but it turns out it can. It just kind of can't figure out the scale of the scene. It's just like a little more weird than real life footage, because this is actually pretty good, but sometimes the point cloud will be like, let me see if I can like scale it down. The point cloud will look something like that, and then it'll be like really close to the camera. It'll be like this, and you just like, it's just really weird. Obviously, don't do this. When you actually scale the point cloud, it really does mess it up. It's almost perfectly tracked with the footage. So that is the camera tracker in Fusion. I think it's amazing. I highly recommend Fusion as a program, because I think Resolve, like, I switched from Premiere to Resolve not too long ago, and it's been amazing since. Like, once you really figure it out, it's really great. The performance is like amazing. It's really well optimized. I never, besides that one weird bidirectional track issue, which I haven't really been having a problem with anymore. Like, it's a very stable program. It's like, as you can see, we've been doing all this and there's just no lag, whereas in After Effects, it's such a horrible, I mean, maybe like my computer is not perfect right now. I haven't upgraded it in a while, but After Effects it's always crashing. It's always slow. Like, the lag is just incomprehensible. Whereas Fusion, like, as you can see, like, we literally have text in a scene tracked to it, and I can play it at a very reasonable frame rate. Like, obviously it's not at 60 FPS, but you can still tell what is going on, whereas you can't really do that in After Effects. And in Nuke, I've tried the same thing. I'm not a big fan of Nuke just because I don't feel like learning it, but this is a great software right here. So that is how you track text in Fusion. I think it's a really good, or I thought it wasn't, but turns out, it's just a little problem of making sure that you properly set up this merge 3D, and so that it's really in the scene. And I didn't really cover everything inside of this node. You can like make it use the GPU and stuff, but there's like this whole thing, and then there is a lot of stuff about like the ground plane and the 3D scene transform that you don't really need it for basic purposes, but obviously if you're doing something really serious, I would recommend using that. There's also this gutter size, which, as you can tell, well, I mean, you might not be able to tell now, but if you like darken the image real quick, you'll be able to see that all of these little trackers, they don't actually reach the end of the screen. And that's all the gutter size is. Let me just reset this and then enable the preview. As you can see, it brings them in closer to the center the higher it is. So if you want it to reach the end of your scene, you can just turn on that gutter size. Just bring it down a little and then it'll make them go all the way to the edge. But I usually just leave that at the default because sometimes the ones on the edge, you know, they might come into the scene weird, or I don't know. Could really be anything. But yeah, leave any comments in the description because I will be answering them if you have any questions. And yeah, thanks for watching.